Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Derek Ruby Show. I am your host, the previously mentioned Mr. Ruby. Today, we're going to do something a little bit different on the show. We're going to do an interview about last year, the game. All right, everybody, we have a special guest today. He's the Director of Marketing for Elastic Games and a representative of last year, the game, Kevin Scharf. Kevin, welcome to the Derek Ruby Show. How are you doing today, sir?
Doing pretty good. It's a little bit cold up here in Montreal. We've got some cold rain, even though it's August, or April. It's April. It's not August. Yes, that's when our beta happens. Don't worry about that. But it's a little bit cold outside still, which is kind of weird. But apparently summer is finally coming to Canada in about a few days, so I'll be happier then. But we're happy to be here. It's going to be fun.
Well, you ought to move to Texas. You'll have warm weather all year long.
I hear Texas has that perfect weather arc in comparison to Montreal, Canada. I'm gonna have to consider that. It's always interesting when you're working in a city like this. I think that's why Montreal's becoming a gaming mecca. Is we spend so much time indoors throughout the year that all we can do is work at our computers. So there you go.
So, Kevin, I understand that you've been in the gaming industry for a long time. Could you share with us a little bit about your background?
Yeah, sure. So I got my start at Ubisoft. I was doing some different things there. I was working as a guy at a marketing agency, actually, on contract. It was a great little marketing agency called Czar Media. And I was doing events and kind of stuff with retail and all sorts of event marketing, experiential marketing, and stuff like that. And then I had the opportunity to go to Ubisoft, had a great time there. I worked there for about a year directly, and I was doing contract work for them for about 2 years before that, if I'm not mistaken. And that kind of gave me a passion for gaming. Like, I was always a gamer to begin with, but that's where I really started falling in love with the game industry and decided I really wanted to do this for a living. And then from there, I was working with a bunch of other small indie projects and doing other things on the side. And then I had a chance to work at Eidos, in Eidos Montreal, which is just a fantastic development house. And up to that point, I'd never worked in brand or direct development. I'd only been on the publishing side, which is very different. You don't get your hands on the game that much. You don't get to talk to the developers too much. You're not involved in the process. So when I went to Eidos Montreal, I was on a what we call an intern contract because they're looking to fill in some spots that were going on because some guys were going on vacation and stuff. So it was kind of like an intense kind of 6-month internship where they just needed a guy to come in, and I had the experience. They liked me, and I was there for the whole 6 months doing brand, and I was just having a blast. And that was on Deus Ex Mankind Divided, which was just a fantastic project to work on. And from that, I got the bug, as some guys on our team call it, where I just said, God, I got to stay in development. I got to be part of this process of making the game. And I met some great guys there. I met a guy named Nicholas, who's a programmer here actually at Elastic Games. And he called me up one day and said, you got to come take a look at this. You got to get your hands on this thing I'm working on. And I was like, what? What are you talking about? And he's like, it's a Kickstarter. And I looked at the Kickstarter and I was like, what is this? I haven't heard of this. Went to the office, and it was a pretty interesting office. I had to walk through this back alley and then go up this fire escape. And then there's this beautiful loft. Like, it was a terrible back alley, like out of a horror movie, actually. You go up this fire escape, and then you're on top of the building. There's just this beautiful loft-style studio space for 8 of us. And I walked in, and I was like, oh my God, this is the dream, being in a small team in Montreal, clear skyline, really interesting space. And then I got my hands on the game and hit it off with James Waring, our creative director and CEO of the company, and met Alex Halachuk and Charles Goatley, who were all the lead guys, lead programmer, lead designer, technical designer, and they just started working together. We started taking a look at stuff, and they seemed to like me still, so they asked me to be on part of the team, and I've been handling marketing ever since, and it's just been a blast.
Well, Kevin, I know you get this question a lot, but last year is described as an asymmetrical multiplayer horror game. So yeah. Could you tell us what last year is about, and can you explain to the audience what an asymmetrical multiplayer horror game actually is?
Well, sure. So to answer the last part of your question there, an asymmetrical horror game is usually referring to a multiplayer game where a group of people play as a team versus one other player who's trying to defeat the team. Usually the one other player has a distinct advantage, or they have some specific mechanic built around them to offset the fact that they're fighting X amount of other people working as a team. Obviously, the balance is always critical, so it's about 5 people, and as they get whittled down, it gets harder and harder for that team to defeat the one person. That's how all asymmetrical horror games work in practice, or at least on paper. For us, last year as an asymmetric horror game is about tapping into that 90s slasher horror flick vibe. So Scream, The Faculty, I Know What You Did Last Summer, which is not 90s, but I consider it an honorary mention. We love that movie over here. And, Cabin in the Woods. I Know What You Did Last Summer. I meant Cabin in the Woods as the slasher one. Sorry, I got myself mixed up there. I Know What You Did Last Summer, which is 90s, which we loved. Some other things like that, and just kind of tapping into those kind of veins of horror. And it's taking place on Halloween night in 1998, if I remember correctly. And you're stuck in East Side High, which is the high school that we've created. And you're a band of teenagers who are stuck there, and you're being hunted down by what we like to call the killer, who is one of 3 types, which is either the slasher, the strangler, or the giant. And we'll get more into those further in the conversation today, obviously, but they all play very differently from each other.
Well, Kevin, your game's going to be available on Steam, obviously worldwide, so what languages will the game be offered in?
Currently, I can confirm that we're being offered in French and English. So we have Quebecois French, Parisian French, as well as English. We're looking into other localization options right now. Ideally, we'd like to launch with what I would say is Spanish and German. If we can launch with Polish and some Nordic, that'd be fantastic. But it really comes down to budget. So those are things where we're still talking to people and looking at translation costs and things like that, and we have to work it within a very tight budget. But I can guarantee at the moment, like what I can say is solid, like 100% committed is French-English. Localization. At the very least for launch, because post-launch, that happens all the time. Like Dead by Daylight, as an example, didn't launch with Russian and Chinese. And then post-launch, they were able to get Russian and Chinese, Chinese basic and Russian localization. So that's something that's very common, and it's great for digital products that you can drop the localization after launch, which is always helpful.
Well, I'm sure there's going to be a big demand in this game for probably South America and pretty much all over the world once it hits.
I hope so, yeah. But yeah, we do have quite a few people from Brazil sending us emails asking about the game. And there seems to be a strong contingent of people from Mexico. We've had a lot of people from Spain, not South America, but obviously in Europe. And I've been getting quite a few questions from Russia as well as Poland. So there's strong interest across the board, and we're happy to try to help give them support.
Well, since you guys don't have a ready-made fan base like Nightmare on Elm Street, Superman, Spider-Man, Terminator, etc., how hard is it to get your own intellectual property off the ground from scratch with the marketing, and is that a big gamble?
I don't think it's a gamble. I think it's more like having freedom. Honestly, it's one of the weird things. I think sometimes people get hung up on the idea that there's some sort of like good bad, like it's bad to do your own IP, it's good to have other people's IP. My response to that is there's pros and cons. So the pro to having established IP is that sometimes you have built-in numbers, eyeballs get on it really fast. The other pro to it is that there's kind of specific guidelines and rules that you can follow. The universe is pretty set up. But the con there is that you don't have a lot of creative freedom. It can be very difficult for you to navigate through it. And even sometimes the best intentions can go wrong there. There are, of course, exceptions to this rule, examples of really great companies and publishers in the game industry who've taken established IPs and I think have done great games with them. I think Shadow of War by WB is a fantastic example of that, of taking the Lord of the Rings IP and then doing really interesting stuff and doing that whole thing where it's the Nemesis system and everything like that. I think they've done just great work taking an established IP, staying true to it, and then doing something new within it. For us, doing a new IP as an indie is always a plus, and then being allowed to have that creative freedom. Like, come on, like how many people get a chance to create their own horror universe and then throw in things and mix it up? Not many. So we get to have a lot of fun with this, and I think that fun's going to translate to a really great game.
Yeah, having a passion for your project and having your gloves just taken off to do what you want always really stands out when somebody makes anything.
Yeah, definitely. The kid gloves are not on with us, the training gloves. We took the training wheels off a while back. Now we're being chased by a maniac with an axe, so we're just coming out pedaling as fast as we can. So I'm really for me, every day coming in and seeing something new and seeing some new direction in brand and art and game design and stuff is just so much fun. So really, honestly, having that creative freedom is I would say, one of our biggest strengths, for sure.
Well, Kevin, I know this is supposed to be based in a '90s horror film, but the first time I saw your trailer, the Predator trailer, it really gave me a feeling. It just reminded me of the Prom Night movie with Jamie Lee Curtis and My Bloody Valentine and Scream and just all these things rolled into one. So is this game really an homage to the entire slasher genre in general?
Well, like we are definitely giving a homage to like that Americana, that kind of feeling of 90s horror. But at the same time, like once again, because we have that IP freedom, and it ties back to the earlier conversation, we can really go wherever we want. So if we really feel strong about tapping into kind of Carrie as an example, or tapping into that feeling of Nightmare on Elm Street or that kind of stuff, like that's something that we can do, and we're having a blast with it. Another nice thing about it, honestly, is that you're unchained. So, we can take things, we can take ideas and be like, how do you last yearify that? How do you make that work within our universe? And that's just a blast. Like there's lots of horror movies with examples of gigantic big brutes that kill people, but in last year, the giant is really our giant. And then making him work within the confines of last year has been so much fun. He's my favorite killer to play as, honestly, in the game right now.
Well, obviously you're a big horror fan, Kevin. So what was your favorite horror movie growing up as a child?
So if I was to think about that off the top of my head, probably I have some interesting memories of those things. I won't get too deep into them, but right off the bat, I would say, and it's going to sound strange, but I would say probably Alien. That was one where I was out with a bunch of friends. We were young kids. We were doing a big sleepover party birthday. I'm from a small town and outside of Ottawa, and we were renting all these different movies and like The Mask and stuff like that with Jim Carrey, and then we saw this cassette in the Blockbuster. And for all you kids who grew up without a Blockbuster, I feel bad for you. It was a terrible but fun experience. But the craziest thing about it was that we found this cover, and it was said Alien on it in green and stuff. We're like, oh, we got to get this. We look at the rating and we're like, oh, the parent won't let us get it. We got to sneak it in. So we snuck it in. We had like 10 movies. We had like the X-Men cartoon series for rent, and we had like this other stuff. And then we had like Alien slid in there. And the teller, the cashier at the Blockbuster, didn't say anything. He just zipped it through, and then the dad didn't notice. And then we went back to the place, and then everyone upstairs went to sleep. The adults were all in the basement watching the movie on this basement TV. And sleeping bags everywhere, and we're watching all the fun movies and stuff. And they're like, okay, put the movie in. They're asleep. And we put Aliens in. And we're just like, none of us could sleep. It was just great. We're like, oh, God, it's coming out of his chest. Oh, God, look at that thing. And it was just great. And I fell in love with horror from that. And then as I got older and started to get to explore horror and get like back into 80s horror, and like I'd have friends being like, have you seen Hellraiser? I'm like, hell what? And Hellraiser being put in front of me and be like, oh, God, this is amazing. And The Village and all those kind of classic ones. And obviously the Friday 13th series, which is fantastic. And going through all that kind of stuff was just such a blast. But for me, the one that really sticks with me still to this day is that original feeling of horror in Alien, of watching that guy in the duct with his flamethrower, have no idea where it's coming from, and looking both ways, pitch black, and then it's just there on top of him. It was just great.
Well, for me, I remember being about 4 years old and seeing Jaws come on the TV, and you don't even see the shark, and I was scared of that, hiding behind the pillow and everything. And, of course, as time went on, you graduate to the Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, and so on. Yeah. But those are fun times.
It's interesting. I've heard people argue that Jaws is more of a thriller, and and I'm like, nah, I think it's a horror. It's got all the elements. It's got the really great soundtrack. It's got, I wouldn't say jump scares, but it's got some psychological components to it, and it's what it left you with. Like, I don't think there's not too many people who don't remember that after watching Jaws for the first time, if you go to a lake or the ocean, you kind of take a moment to look at it and go, do I really want to go in? And I think that's really fun with horror, is the lasting impact it can have on you for the few moments to just go, is it okay for me to turn the lights off here? Can I go around this corner? That's a creepy alley. Fear is a good teacher. I guess, in some ways, and it can also be a lot of fun for entertainment purposes.
Well, I feel like a thriller is really just a subgenre of horror, kind of like the way punk rock music or metal music would be just a subgenre of rock music in general,
Oh, yeah, for sure. But, it's just one of the things, like even Cabin in the Woods. It's kind of more, I would call that a horror comedy in some ways, but it's really good. It hits all of the beats really well. If you haven't seen Cabin in the Woods, I highly recommend it to anyone who's a big fan of horror.
Yes, I agree. Sure. So Kevin, you got a lot of maps on your website, and it confuses me a little bit because, you know, you got a high school, you got a mall, you got some suburbs that kind of remind me of the Halloween neighborhood. You got a summer camp, which I heard you in another interview say that might be changed to a mountain retreat. You got on your Facebook page, you got a giant football field. So my question is, how many maps are actually going to come with the game, or are there more than one variation of a map, or are there sub-levels in the map, you know, different locations? Could you explain that to the viewers, please?
Yeah, sure. I can get into the maps. I can't get too much into it. There's still some stuff that's being tested out and stuff like that. And really what we can say at this point is our plan at the moment is to launch with about 4 maps, if I'm not mistaken. The maps are big. They're not small. At the moment, our focus is Eastside High. You know, it's really about, once again, the way that we're doing stuff is going to get revealed as we get closer to the beta. But each of those maps is about hitting a specific kind of horror element. And sometimes there will be multiple maps with the same theme. So as an example, like the high school, we might have like 3 maps that are built around the Eastside High School that are separate for matches, versus say like 1 map for the mall. Because the mall is huge, and then it's going to have 3-4 levels, and it's going to be a really big map to play around with in a playground. As for the summer camp, that's something where I was just sharing the process of development. Where when we originally pitched it, it was a summer camp. It was a lake, and it was our homage to the Friday 13th lake, obviously. And then of course situations have changed because now there's a Friday 13th game. That's awesome. They're bringing Jason to life. So for us, it was a question of, do we really need another lake on the market? Is that really necessary? Is that something that we want to put out there for fans? And for us, it's always about quality. So that's engaging in conversation and development where we kind of go, okay, do we think we can do something that's a last year lake camp that's really last year? Or do we take it somewhere else? Do we do something that's more of like a cabin in the woods feel? Do we do something that's more of like on the mountain? So that's something that's still an ongoing discussion, but we got time to do that, and that's more than fine. As for the suburbs, I can't talk about them too much, but the suburbs are the suburbs, and they're flipping amazing. I'm pretty excited about them. I think they're one of our larger maps. And then when it comes down to the other stuff, you never know. I think it's important for people to remember that for us, maps are characters in their own right, so we spend a lot more time on them than anything else because we're not procedurally generated, right? So like Dead by Daylight launched with 3 procedural generation sets. That created longevity for gameplay matches. But for us, we want people to fall in love with the maps and know them and know every nook and cranny to really get a feel for them and understand the personality of the maps. So that's one of the reasons why we're going for static maps, and we're putting a lot of time and a lot of our resources into those. We look forward to seeing everyone really get in touch with their inner East Side High freshmen when they get into those maps, because they're going to be a blast.
So chat me up on the character design a little bit. So say a character like Amber or the Slasher or the Giant or any of the characters in your game, how long does it take to go from a piece of paper and a concept idea to get polished and put into your game where you go, yes, this is what we want? Does it take 2 months, 3 months? How long does that take?
It's very organic. That's one of the things that I think is the hardest thing for people to understand about the game industry. And I'm talking broadly. I'm not going to give specifics on our game. But our philosophy is it's done when it's done. We're very much from the Blizzard school of entertainment. So, which I know if anyone follows Blizzard games, when Blizzard says the release date, when people are like, when are you going to release the game? Blizzard's like, when it's done, when it's reached our quality bar, when we've signed off on it, and not before then. And for us, that's the same process. Sometimes certain things have just clicked. Like Nick, the nerd, he just clicked. He clicked really fast. We knew exactly what we wanted out of him. But the Strangler, as an example, and the Slasher, they've gone through a very organic process where there's been lots and lots of variations on them, and we've done lots and lots of tests. So, it's one of those things. Now, in terms of just broad speaking about the industry, I think it usually comes down to the quality of the work being done, the engineer working in, how many people you have working. We're a very small team, like even by indie standards. We got 6-8 core guys, and then we got some contractors on the side. But at the end of the day, like a character model, in my opinion, it shouldn't be taking longer than 2 months. When you're doing it right, animations can take a little bit of time depending on what engine and system you're using. But really, at the end of the day, when you're doing it right, in my opinion, time isn't the issue. It's about did it meet the quality bar that you set as a company? And did it meet the quality bar that the fans deserve, the people who are putting the money into your game? That's the only thing that matters.
Well, Kevin, a lot of people when they hear about games like this, they automatically think of Evolve. Now, no disrespect to Turtle Rock Studios, 2K, and Take-Two Entertainment, but some of my friends personally were like, hey, the monster will just run away until he gets powered enough to kill us all. It's not that fun. It's very unbalanced. And then, of course, the issues with the DLC. So could you tell people out there how last year is not going to be like Evolve?
Well, first off, if we're going to talk about Evolve, I think there's a big conversation to have there. Evolve is, in my opinion, I actually really enjoyed Evolve for a lot of the stuff. I think for Evolve, one of the things that happened was that the balancing of the game was very difficult. They had this very tug-of-war balance system. So it was really about, like, the first half, you're hunting the monster, and then the second half, the monster's hunting you. And that's how most of the maps worked. Although they had some really great stuff, like Last Stand maps and kind of Kill the Nest maps and things like that. For us, I think that the key thing is you want to have different kinds of game modes. You want to have different kinds of objectives each map. You don't want the same thing every map, which has been important for us. And then you want to have good balance, and Predator mode is a big part of that. Right from the get-go, the killer is pretty much always as powerful as he's going to be throughout a match. And the survivors, though they can get more and more powerful, Predator mode is an equalizer. It's not an overpower. I know that people are concerned about that, who've said that online and stuff, but really for us, Predator mode gives the killer the freedom to really study the survivors, what tactics they're using, what they're holding. And then from there, he can plan how to split the party, take advantage of when teams of people have to split up, find ways to use the environment to his advantage, and then make really, really quick retreats. One of the key things to remember about Predator mode is that you can't just go in and out in front of someone or behind someone. You have to be out of sight, so no survivor can see you, and you have to be a certain distance as well. So, you have to be careful how to use it. It's also using a cooldown timer. So it's not something you can just spam whenever you want. But I think those are the kind of the core things that I would talk about for sure when it comes to that stuff. But, like Evolve, for all of its strengths and weaknesses, paved the way for asymmetrical. It proved that there was a mark for asymmetrical games, in my opinion. It reignited that love of those kind of games. And I think there was some unfortunate, I don't even know if I would call it unfortunate, but it was just, there was definitely some reactions that were puzzling to me. Like, before Evolve came out, everyone got really worked up about the cosmetic market for DLC and Evolve, right? Look at Overwatch. Like, Overwatch now, it's like loot crates, so you level up every match. Boom, come buy your skins. Now there's a skin day. You earn more points to get skins and unlock stuff. So I think the market's changed a little bit. I think when it comes to DLC and in-game content and things like that, as game developers, you have to be very aware of the fact that when it's cosmetic, it's fine. When it's balanced, it's fine. But if it turns into pay to win, it's not fine. And that's incredibly important. And yeah, that's pretty much how it goes.
Well, I wholeheartedly would agree with you about that. And I do feel like they did pave the way for a lot of games that are coming out today. So is it possible if one person, let's just say two people have the game and they don't have any friends to play with, and they just go ahead and play one-on-one, is it actually possible for one person to win against the killer?
Without getting too much into it, because I don't want to spoil anything, we're going to do some stuff. Yes, it is possible to win. The last survivor does have the ability to win the match.
So basically, it seems like you guys are really going for the spirit of a horror movie. So like you take Halloween, for example, Michael goes around, picks people off one at a time, and a lot of slasher movies do this, where it comes down to them and the main protagonist. So I guess it's fair to say that this game is really trying to simulate that feeling.
Yeah, well, I think the key thing for us is just games are not movies and movies are not games. But they do have similarities. So, really what we're trying to do is capture the atmosphere and then bring you into this world, bring this world to life, and then let you have fun with your friends. Let you have a great experience. And that's really what it's about. I would mention games like, as an example, Verdun is an indie game, fantastic indie game about World War I. And those guys have created, the insurgency of World War I games. Or Battlefield 1, fantastic game, I love it. If you haven't played Battlefield 1, there is nothing like charging someone on horseback, killing them with your sword, and then getting shot by a biplane. That is an experience you cannot have in any other game. It's fantastic. I highly recommend it. But or when you watch a guy running on top of a blimp as it's blowing up, that's great. But Verdun is kind of like the insurgency of World War I games. It's very like one bullet, one kill, use cover, foxholes, jump between no man's land, and I love that game. But they're not trying to create a one-on-one recreation of World War One. It's all about balancing out the difficulty curve and the learning curve for players so that players are having fun. And for us, the most important thing is that people are having fun in the game. So although we're using a horror atmosphere, although we're asymmetrical, fun comes first because that's what people are here for.
So when people are playing your game and they're playing with the teenagers and the killer, is there a time limit to the matches, or does the match end when either the killer wins or the teenagers survive?
I can't get too much into that at this time, unfortunately. What I can say is that we're going to be feeling that out in beta. We do have some systems in place, but at the moment we have nothing locked down 100% there. So we've experimented with both ways. We've experimented with a timer, a match timer, and then we've experimented with not having a match timer where it's just objective based. What I can say is that the killer can win by having the killer's way of winning at the moment is called a home run, which is he's killed every single person on the map. The survivors can win by escaping, but sometimes it creates this whole thing where it's like you leave your one friend behind because he screwed you over last match, so you're like, I'm escaping, but fuck you, I'm not coming back for you, which happens a lot. I actually got really upset with our lead programmer who left me behind just the other day in a playtest. He was like, yeah, you remember how you didn't pay for lunch? I'm like, you bastard. It's like I'm holding the door open for him, and he just ran and left me. And then, of course, the Strangler got his hands on me, which was James at the time, and that was the end of it for me.
Well, I guess that goes back to the spirit of the horror movie, like I was talking about. You know, in the real movies, people leave people behind all the time. People get picked off one at a time a lot of times. So
yeah, and what's really interesting for us is a lot of the time people go in with a plan. They hatch a plan. They go, okay, we're going to stick together. We're going to be a really tight group. Yeah, we're going to stick together. We have all the weapons. And then the giant shows up, and it's run for the hills. And it's like, he chose the giant. This will not work. And then other times where we're like, we'll stick together as a group. There's no way the Strangler can overpower us. And then, you know, you're moving as a group, and then you're like, okay, one of us has to be here, one of us has to be there, and then suddenly you see the chain fly out of the darkness, and the person's getting pulled into the darkness, and you're running after him, and all you hear is the echo of laughter from the Strangler. And it's really about those kind of moments, those great player-driven moments.
So what happens when you die? Do you watch the other players till the round's over, or do you go back to a lobby?
I can't get into that at this time.
You have many weapons on your website, and I know that you have a shotgun. So do you get a few shots off with that shotgun, or? Yeah,
the shotgun is what we call an environmental found weapon. So it's something that's on the map. So it's not tied to class or anything like that. And the shotgun has limited ammo. So once you run out of the ammo, it's gone. It's out. So as an example, another weapon that we have, which we put on the Facebook, which is the flamethrower, is very similar. You find it on the map. Once you've used up the ammo, it's done. It becomes a very powerful tool at keeping the killer at bay and sometimes winning the match. But once you've used it, it's over. What was interesting is the last match that I played with one of our testers, he actually pointed the shotgun at me and I was the killer, so I ran away. And I didn't know he was out of ammo. So he actually bluffed me, which was awesome. And then that allowed him to escape. So he actually won the match. He was the last guy standing. And he won the match by completely bluffing me because I didn't pull a Clint Eastwood and I didn't say, do you feel lucky? You know? So I didn't go, you punk, you know? Instead I was like, run, I don't want to die. So it's one of those things where it's really, really fun. What we don't want the game to become is like a first-person shooter. That's not the point, right? It's a horror game, so we don't want it to be like Call of Duty or Battlefield or something like that.
So, Kevin, if Samantha was to hit Amber with a baseball bat, will Amber get hurt? Is there friendly fire in the game?
So at the moment, the way that it works is a survivor cannot kill another survivor with a direct weapon. So baseball bat, shotgun, that kind of stuff, you can't do that. But we have currently in our build some area effect weapons that can kill, that can injure. And we're testing that out. I think the number one problems that people have in gaming is griefers, trolls. That can be a very big pain in the ass. But at the same time, there is something to be said for fun. Like some of my favorite moments in Halo is when your friend throws a sticky grenade and he misses the grunt and it hits you in the back. And then you turn around and go, you mother, and then you blow up, right? So that's something that we're still testing. I think we're going to be going through that very heavily in beta and really listening to our backers and the people who participate in the Last Chance backing round to get a feel for what works and doesn't work with the community. So I think it's safe to say at this time that it's something that's organic, basically, that we've tested a few different things, but we're still waiting to see in a big testing environment how it'll work out.
Well, I'm very happy that you guys kept trolling in mind, because there's nothing worse, and especially like when we're talking about playing, like when somebody plays a game like Call of Duty or something, and then the guy on your team just shoots you just to do it constantly,
Yeah. Oh, I think that what's important is there's a difference between what I would call like happy mistakes that create great stories. Like, you're on your like little motorcycle in Battlefield 1, and you're like running around doing great stuff, and then the tank shoots that's on your team to try to kill something in front of you, and he just mistimed it, so you're just a little too fast, and you blow up with it, and you're like, son of a bitch, That's fun. That's fun friendly fire. That's something that adds story and makes rich gameplay. Not fun friendly fire is exactly as you described it. And when you have trollers, that should be a word. Trollers.
Well, you heard it right. You heard it right
here.
They're
worse than trolls. They're trollers.
Well, you coined the phrase. You heard it right here, folks. Kevin Scharf, trollers. Remember that.
Branding.
Branding, exactly.
Half of branding is usually just a slip of the tongue. But in this case, I would say that when someone's trolling like aggressively or consistently, people are usually pretty fast on the uptick. And when you have a good, robust kind of system to filter those people out, when you're listening to your community, when you can find a way to vet someone and create a verdict and ban, that's what you can do. Unfortunately, honestly, in my opinion, it's very, very difficult to get away from trolling in online games. There's always some element of it. If they're not trolling you through friendly fire, they're trolling you through their mics. If they're not trolling you through their mics, they might be doing something like swatting. If they're not doing that, they're doing something else. There's always going to be some people in the world who just want to see it burn down. So we'll do our best to protect our community and work with people to ensure it's a great community. But it is unfortunately the nature of multiplayer communities that these things happen. All we can say is that we're going to be quick to react to those problems and to listen to the community about problems and making sure that we post updates, that we identify people who are problems, and that we fix things.
So were there any weapons that you guys wanted to put in the game, but they just weren't feasible? Maybe they didn't fit the setting. I mean, obviously you wouldn't put like a grenade in there.
There's a good story here. So on our Predator mode trailer, there was a conversation that happened. I don't know if this guy's going to see this. I hope he does. Where someone made a joke about axes, and then someone said chainsaws, and these two guys are having this argument. And I came in and I said, why not both, as a joke? And then guys like, you heard it here first. Chain axes are in the game. And then I foolishly went to some low-level designers in our company, and I said, let's make some chain axes. And that got all the way to the concept stage until James stepped in and said, what the hell is going on? And I was like, we're making chain axes. It's part of marketing. We're fulfilling a player request. And James stared at me and said, is this in the spirit of last year or the spirit of your conversations? And I said, okay, please, can we keep the bear? Can we keep a bear in? Because we've been talking about having a bear environmental kill. And he's like, okay, we'll see what we can do about the bear, but chain axes are probably not going in. So chain axe is something that, as an example, is something where it was just like too ridiculous to fit in the game. Just does not fit in the world we're trying to craft, in terms of tonality and all that kind of stuff. But, that said, there are other things that we've tested. I think there was like nunchucks at one point, and there was some like taser darts or something like that, and there's some other things that we were testing out. But there's always things that you test and take a look at and then re-examine. Really, at this point for us, we're just fine-tuning and balancing out the current weapons, and we're going through those over and over and over again to make those as good as possible for the beta.
Well, Kevin, my brother Brett, in general, he works a lot. He's got a baby that's a year old, so he doesn't have a lot of time to play games that much. Like right now he's playing the new Zelda, but he's not usually a single-player kind of guy. And him and his friends like to play multiplayer stuff, but a lot of times, sometimes they get a game and they either get bored with it real quick or, they fall out. So what is it about last year that's going to keep players coming back, say, 6 months after launch, 2 years after launch?
That's an interesting question. So, I think when we're talking about things like longevity or tail, which is the term in marketing, and I hate the term, but it's a term commonly used, it always comes down to what are you doing that's different than the other guys in the industry? And what are you going to do to convince a player to keep coming back, or at least foster a community where someone wants to come back, which is important. And for us, it's the fun factor. It's making sure that the games are fun. It's having a good, robust plan for post-launch content. We want to be releasing maps to our fans. We're looking at that right now, but I believe our philosophy is to make sure those maps are free, so that we're constantly releasing new content in a steady stream, so there's new maps to engage with, which is critical for multiplayer games. But I think really, honestly, the big one is just being reactive, listening to your fans, making sure that the updates are coming in, making sure that you're squashing bugs, making sure that when the community has a really great idea, that you adopt it, or at least you give it its chance to shine or test it out. And that for me is the thing. But we've already gotten past the hardest part, which is, do you have a fun game, and do you have a good-looking game? And we have a fun, good-looking game. That's Valhalla. That in my opinion is great. And then when you can push that up to the polished shine of a AAA game, then you're really going somewhere great. And that's what we're trying to do. And I think we've achieved that so far. And when it comes to engaging with people of limited time and what's going to make me keep coming back to that, my response is always the same, which is, if you're having fun, come back to it. If you're not, it's time to move on. As gamers, I think it's important for us all to know that you've invested your time wisely in terms of entertainment, and that there's always choice. It kind of gets into that thing where some people online have been kind of saying stuff like, oh man, when Friday 13th comes out, I'm abandoning Dead by Daylight. Or, nah man, this game looks like crap, I'm sticking with Dead by Daylight, I don't like the Friday 13th guys. And I'm just going to wait till last year comes out. My response is, why not both? If you have the ability to, if you can, test the games out, see what you like, what you don't like, and go with the thing that you love, and have fun. I think it's fantastic that gamers are going to have such a wide variety of choices, and that we're going through this like golden era of horror games, this revival that started, in my opinion, with Outlast coming out, and then just really started snowballing, and we started seeing more and more horror elements coming back. We started seeing really great kind of games with philosophical ideas, with like really out there horror, like Agony. Have you seen that one? That one looks just crazy.
No, I haven't seen that one yet.
Yeah, that trailer, just wow. Like I saw that trailer, I just kind of stood up and gave my like Hubert clap, really aggressive clap, staring at the screen going, I hate them, but because they look like they got something that looks just phenomenal, but man, it looks so much fun as a gamer. And then at the same time, like, it's just such an interesting time. Like, for the first time ever, I really do think that we're going to see a great Jason game come out. I got my fingers crossed. I hope Gun Media pulls it off, and from the look of it, they got the passion for the franchise, so I really think that they're going to knock it out of the park. And, the Dead by Daylight guys proved to everyone in the industry that asymmetrical horror games can be profitable and can be fun, can have long tails. And they created a really great kind of cat and mouse, hide and seek kind of seesaw game that really played with first-person and third-person perspectives and allowed the person as the killer to feel powerful but still have weaknesses with first-person POV, and then allowed people with third-person, the survivors, to like be sneaky and stuff. When you screw up, you're like, oh man, I really screwed up, I think that stuff is just fantastic. Like, there's so many choices. It's so great. It's the best time ever to be a PC gamer, in my opinion, right now. And you know what? Like, not even 6 years ago, there were articles saying PC gaming is dead. And right now, I'm like, it's never been stronger, in my opinion. Looking at it, it's never been stronger. That's not to say console gaming isn't great, and we'd love to get on console and to engage with those players as well. But like, I really think that PC gaming's in a golden age, and I think console gamers are going to have stronger games because of it. Because when there's strong PC development studios, those studios get really strong in PC development, and then they come over to console and they bring really great stuff with them to console as well. So, look at Naughty Dog, look at any of the other guys who've got CD Projekt Red. Very PC on Witcher 1. Witcher 3 is my favorite console RPG that I've ever purchased. Although I wish I had the mods that some people have online, but it's just crazy. So that's all the stuff that I would say about it.
Well, I will say this about your trailer. It does look like it's a lot of fun, but the graphics are tremendous. So it looks like you're onto something.
Well, that's our alpha footage. So that's really, like, we actually were debating if that met our quality bar. We were actually talking about not releasing it at that time. We weren't 100% sure we wanted to release it at that quality level. So that's not 100% close to where we're going to be at the end.
Well, Kevin, my friend...
Thank you.
Yeah, well, like I said, it does look amazing. I mean, I saw it. I saw the original trailer, I think a year ago, but when I ran across that on YouTube, I mean, I was just taken aback by it.
When you say the original trailer, you're talking about the Kickstarter trailer?
Yeah, when I saw the Kickstarter trailer, that concept intrigued me. But then when I saw the Predator trailer, I was just blown away. I was like, man, look at the way that this looks, the feel of it, everything.
It's been a long road. Like, when you look at our original Kickstarter trailer, like, we joke about it, but last year is the game that Imager funded. We weren't moving too far. We weren't getting a lot of attention. We did this big post on Imager. I know we did the post on Imager before. Remember that I wasn't with the team at that point, so I might get the story wrong. James might come and correct me in the future. But we did this big thing on Imager. We got a lot of reactions, and then we put up the Kickstarter. And the way that people interacted with us on Imager and were like, just totally like, do this, make this happen, was amazing. And then we moved with it. And that just pushed us further and further in doing excellent stuff. So, it's been such a crazy road to get to where we're going. And it's been an unusual road, especially for indies. But we're kind of getting that final stretch, so we're really excited. We're really, really excited to get this in the hands of consumers, of gamers, and letting them really have a lot of fun.
So my friend Garth years ago had a game called City of Heroes, and we all used to play it, but he kept playing it and kept going back, and they had dedicated servers. And then one day those dedicated servers stopped, and he can't play it no more. And I understand your game is going to be peer-to-peer. So if a group of friends have this game and just love it, and 5-10 years from now they still want to play it, are they going to be able to?
Yeah, well, like one of the nice things about peer-to-peer, I think, is the fact that you're able to... You're not tied down to servers, so if the company runs out of money and they close the servers down, the game doesn't just dry up. We're looking into servers. Like, that's something where we're looked at it. Like, I think a good example is how Killing Floor, I think it's Killing Floor 2, how they put their code out there so that people could make the servers that they want. It's either Killing Floor or is it... I think it's Killing Floor. I might be getting mixed up with a different game. But we've looked at possibly getting server stuff set up. But being such a small team, we decided that the best thing to do right now is to make sure that peer-to-peer is working within our budgets. That way we can actually pull off everything and put every penny we can into the quality of the game and how good it runs and everything. And then depending on how successful it is, I think we'll revisit the server thing afterwards. With games like City of Heroes, which was an MMO game, which I loved, Paragon City, we miss you. We miss fighting within it. We miss the Rogue Isles. We miss all the stuff, and we miss going to Pretoria and the Peril Dimension city and all that kind of stuff. But when it comes to MMO games, there's a shelf life because having consistent running servers is incredibly expensive. And I think at this point, that's why I think you see a lot of games now are moving away from that kind of stuff, and they're trying to get more into matches again, like getting into kind of what we're doing in Dead by Daylight, Call of Duty, and all that stuff, because matches, it's a little bit cheaper to run server-wise than consistent MMOs. Though, honestly, you can still see the survival kind of MMO, what do you call them, MMOs? But the survival games, things like Rust or the Conan, the recent Conan one, which I'm getting wrong, Conan Exiles, I think. If I got the name wrong, Conan fans, please don't murder me. When you see those kind of games like Rust and that, it's interesting to see how they're running stuff on private servers and things like that. But we're such a small indie team that our focus is on peer-to-peer because that guarantees that someone who gets our game can still play and find other people to play with in the future, no matter what happens to us.
Well, I heard you mention the Nintendo Switch in a previous interview. Is it even is it even possible to port this game to a Nintendo Switch?
So I don't really remember the context. I'm trying to remember if I was joking or being serious. But regardless, I think the Nintendo Switch is an interesting console. It definitely has some very interesting features to it. We would have to really look at it, and it's just like the other consoles. It comes down to looking at it, understanding what the specs are, the limitations, and all that jazz. So I can't say if we can get it onto the Switch. I would be surprised. I think we'd have to do a significant downgrade, to be honest. But it's something we're always open to. Why wouldn't you want to be on Nintendo's platform? It's a fantastic platform. Why wouldn't you want to be on PS4 or Xbox One? These are all great platforms to be on. They're all great machines, and if it's easier to get your game into the hands of someone on PS4 because in their country PC parts are incredibly expensive, but a console is easy to buy out of country and then just bring in over the border on a car ride, then why wouldn't you want to be on console? So yeah, it's something that we'll look into alongside the other console stuff that we're looking into because we're getting flooded. I can't even the amount of emails I have to read every day of people just begging me to get this, me as if it's my choice alone, as if it's to get this game. Like I'm a Roman emperor of the past. I could just kind of wave my wand. Yes, let's spend another $1 million on development. It's like, guys, we're indies. We're not EA. We're not Ubisoft. We don't have this kind of money. We wish we do. Help us get that kind of money. But when it comes to console development, it's a very tricky thing. I'm still amazed when I see other indies and Kickstarters that manage to get on the console on very tight budgets. I'm always amazed at it because the process is just so long to go through certification and get the extra engineers and do it right and make sure everything is optimized and all that jazz. But we're looking into doing console. It would probably have to happen after launch unless something dramatically changed. But we would make that jump in a heartbeat. If we could get onto console, it would happen tomorrow.
So if the big goal is to eventually get on the console, because obviously based off the game's success, and I believe it will be.
Well, I'm going to interrupt you there. It's like, it's that kind of thing. Like, it's not a goal. Like, we have, like, as an example, like, I had this question. Someone said, do you have good keyboard and mouse support? I'm like, absolutely. They're like, oh, no controller support. I'm like, no, we balanced it for controller support too. We had our first focus, what we were funded on and backed by, was Kickstarter fans who wanted this for PC. So that's our first commitment, and that's the commitment that takes precedence over everything else. But we have gotten controller support because there are many PC players who like to play with controllers, and we wanted to make sure that it plays just as good on a controller as it does on a mouse and keyboard. We feel very strongly about that, and that's something that's going to be working right out of the box. And then if we can get to console afterwards, fantastic. We're more than happy to get there. But make no mistake, we will not compromise quality. We won't compromise our timelines and our deliveries to get onto other platforms. We have a commitment to our backers to get onto PC, and that's going to happen. I think the only feasible way, in my opinion, that we would take a breath back if there was some sort of deal or something where someone came forward and said we want to release on all these at the same time, and here's more money to make your game even better. That's the only way I could possibly see that happening. But we're completely, I don't want to get too much into what ifs, but like right now we're 100% committed to making the best possible PC version of our game as possible right now.
Well, I'm sure it's going to be a great game because, like I said, the trailer looks amazing. So there have been other indie games that have got distribution from bigger companies to get on the console. So obviously, based off what you just said, I mean, it is a possibility that if a company were to approach you, that maybe in the future that could happen.
Well, of course, we're like any other company. Why would you say no to someone who wants to help you out? We're always open to hearing and talking to people, and it's really that simple. It comes down to whatever's put in front of us. Does it benefit the game? And B, does it support the backers? To us, the most important thing is making sure that the backers are covered. They're the ones who got us to where we got. They're the ones who helped us build this company. And they're the ones who helped us get our first project to the point that it's at, to the point that it'll release. The only thing we won't compromise on, honestly, is anything that asks us to take away from the backers. It's not going to happen.
Well, you were talking about earlier how horror games are on the rise, and I mean, I agree with you, because we got Outlast 2, a new Resident Evil, a vampire game, Friday the 13th, and of course last year coming out. Why do you think now? Why do you think that is? Do you think before it was a marketing problem, or do you think that it was the AAA companies and the movie studios just not wanting to offend certain groups out there?
No, I think it comes in waves. I've heard this argument before where people say that, it's about offending people or not offending people or target groups or this or that. And my opinion has always been the same, which is, well, that's BS. Like, think about Mass Effect Andromeda. Perfect example. A game that I love the Mass Effect series. I am a Mass Effect fanatic. I played all of them.
I do too.
Oh god, way too much. And like Andromeda, like I know they're getting a lot of shit for their animations and stuff, but I'm still having a blast in it. The combat has never been better. I love the jetpack. I don't know what it is about the jetpack combat, but the jetpack with a shotgun and my Vanguard freaking build, oh my god, I don't even use the switching different like power sets. I'm just like Vanguard, shotgun, shock blast, jetpack, done. This is amazing. Not to say I've tried some other builds like sneak and stealth and stuff, but man, I love playing Vanguard with the jetpack and just running around and just blasting in front of someone, punching them, then shock waving all these other guys and blasting someone with a shotgun. It's great. I think but where were we? I don't even remember the conversation and the point I was making. There are horror elements in games like Mass Effect. There are like horrifying things. Like think about Mass Effect series. It deals with genocide. It deals with systemic racism. It deals with slavery, the concept of what happened between the Geth and the Quarians.
allowing the console to die at the end of the first game.
Well, no, I'm not talking. I'm talking like when we're talking about genocide, it does deal with genocide. What happened to the Krogan, the genophage? It deals with the question of the means. Do the means meet the ends? It deals with big concepts, really horrifying concepts when you think about them in some cases, and really kind of Lovecraftian. Like the Reapers are very Lovecraftian. These entities that exist in dark space in Mass Effect 2. On the edge that are nearly unstoppable, and all you can do is really delay the inevitable in their minds. And yeah, it still has kind of that frat bro, Superman, Space Marine. I'm going to stop him. I'm going to stop them as Fem Shep or Shep, but it's kind of like, Shepard, for those who don't know the series. And Femme is female, because you can play as a male or female character, main character. You can change the gender, which is fantastic. But it's one of those things where, like, there are elements in there that's pretty great. Like Dragon Age series is another great example. They do the entire thing where you can silence a mage. You make them into, I forget the exact name, it's been a while, but you use Illyrium or something and you remove all of their emotions so they can't be possessed by demons. And there's this question of, well, if you have people who are magical, who can at any point be possessed by demons from a dream realm and then wreak unbelievable havoc and death on everyone around them, what do you do to protect your society? Do their freedoms supersede or go above or beyond your society's rights for safety? These are important questions. These are questions that people in the States and Canada and the West are grappling with today, about civic duty and safety and freedom of movement and freedom of speech and rights and being who you are. And Bioware does that fantastic. But when someone says something like, "Oh, is horror in a golden, was horror ignored because it was just horror?" My response to that is just no. Horror wasn't ignored. There's always people talking about horror. There's always people pushing it. When success happens in terms of unit sales, when you see people buying games, other people take notice, and then they want to get in on that action. That's how markets work. That's how products work. So when Outlast was doing really good, you notice there were a lot of other games trying to get in on that action. And some of them might have been in production at the same time. Some of them might have been projects dusted off, and some of them might have been really quick things to cash grabs. That happens. But for us, what I think is really fascinating was you had these 3 asymmetrical horror games, all of them roughly in production around the same time. Friday 13th was Summer Slasher Camp, and I think they launched their Kickstarter a day after ours. I've heard people say things to us, like private messages, like they copied you, and I'm like, no, they didn't. They didn't put an entire Kickstarter together in one night. It's like, great minds think alike. These things happen. For every Star Trek, there's a Star Wars. Babylon 5, Battlestar Galactica. Don't get worked up about it. Find the thing that you like and celebrate success in other groups. Like, don't get it's not Coke versus Pepsi. It's still a soda drink. So I kind of laugh about that stuff because Dead by Daylight, from what I understand, was in production for quite a while, and I think they shared that in one of their Dev Diary things. They went through a very winding path to get to where they got today. And then, it just happened that other people started having very similar concepts and then started getting their teams together and getting that stuff going. And I think that's just part of art in general. I think art is weird. Sometimes people have roughly the same ideas at the same time. Sometimes, yeah, there are cash grabs or copycats, but not nearly as much as people think. It might look that way on the outside, but I'm not. From my experience in the industry and from what I've seen and from my love of entertainment, it's not nearly as much as people think it is, to be honest.
Well, you have a beta coming out in August, so assuming that the beta goes well and there's not really a lot of problems, are we still looking at a 2017 release, or if there's something major and unforeseen, are we possibly looking at 2018?
Well, we'd love to release in 2017, but once again, our commitment is to quality. So really, at the end of the day, we'd love to release the game in 2017. What we've committed to is our beta for mid-August. We're on track for that. We're very excited about that. We're going to get our last chance backing round up and running pretty soon, so people will be able to participate in it. But we're not going to say that we're releasing in 2017 until after the beta. If the beta revealed something that we really want to bounce, or something that's fantastic that we want to bump up even more, and that means that we have to need a little bit more time to release in 2018, then we're going to take that time. Because at the end of the day, no matter how painful the wait is, and I understand it as a gamer, our number one goal is to have the best quality game, and to have something that lives up to what the backers supported. So, that's how we view things. That said, you can see the light at the end of the tunnel here. This boat has sailed. It's coming to port. So any concerns about some sort of like massive significant delay, that's not going to happen. We're going to release at the right time with the best quality, but it's coming. So I think people can, when they see the beta, they'll understand. And I think everyone's going to be very excited.
Well, I think people should be excited about hearing that news because, after all, it's quality over quantity.
Well, it's something that it's a very tricky thing. One of the nice things about being a Kickstarter campaign, one of the nice things for us is that the issue isn't a fear of the runway running out, so to speak, in terms that's how companies talk about it. It really just comes down to the quality. Have we met the quality? Do we need more time to get more quality? That's what it's about. And we have, luckily, the freedom to do that. Not everyone does.
Well, you touched on this earlier about the maps and supporting the game. So obviously you do plan on supporting the game after launch somewhat. But is there a possibility down the road, after the success of the game, of there being a sequel?
I think that's a little too early to talk about at this point, to be honest. We're always open to that kind of stuff. It would be foolish to say all development studios talk about sequels at some point, usually sometimes as early as like pre-production, which I always find amusing. But at the same time, we really want to see how good this game does, and we want to give this game the best support it can get. We're very creative, and we have lots of other concepts. Of course, everyone does in the industry, and outside of the industry, everyone, I think, has a game in them somewhere where they kind of know what their ideal game is. But for us, what's important is to support this game and make this game as good as it is. So I don't think we'll be talking about any sort of sequels or anything until we're satisfied with where the game's at.
Well, if a major movie studio, say a Paramount Pictures or Warner Brothers or something like that, was to say, man, your game is awesome, we'd love it, we'd love to make a movie out of it, give you the merchandise, the comic books, the whole 9 yards, would it be something you guys would be open to? Okay,
so everyone, you heard it here. Apparently Derek has the inside track at Paramount or something. Great, Derek. Get me in touch. I'd love that. Let's make that happen, Derek. No, I think really at the end of the day, when you're getting offers on IPs like that, that's always interesting. And we're always open to having conversations like that. Who wouldn't be? But really for us, the focus is making our IP last year the strongest possible one it can be, and really making sure that it's the best and the most fun for the players to engage with. So always open, always willing to hear people call us up and talk to us about this stuff. But they got to understand that our focus right now is on making the game, and the game ain't gonna get slowed down by any sort of conversation. That's for sure.
Okay, so you touched on this before, and this is going to be a pretty obvious question from anybody who's been listening to the interview. But to steal a line from Bruce Pritchard's show, Something to Wrestle With, there's rumor and innuendo out there on the internet that there's some kind of beef with Friday the 13th. And could you just go ahead and put that to bed for people so they could stop flooding the chat rooms with this competition as if there's not enough room for both games for some reason?
Oh, I've heard that constantly, and that's something I've made my statements about it all the time. I actually make a joke about the greatest actress in history, who's this little girl from an El Paso taco commercial, where these families go, burritos, tacos, burritos, which one? And she goes, why not both? And they all go, hey, and they lift her in the air. And it's this little child actress who looks just so happy to be there. She probably doesn't know she's getting paid to do it. But I just laugh about it. What a wonderful, wonderful time to be a horror game fan. We're getting an adjacent game. We have an established game like Dead by Daylight that has all sorts of great content. It has Halloween in it, as Michael Myers, and Mike Myers, the comedian. No. And then on top of it, last year, the Agnostic IP having this really great 90s horror slasher flick. And they all play different. They're all different games. It's so great. We don't have any beef with them. The story is pretty convoluted. I'm not going to retell the whole thing here, but at the end of the day, IPs are IPs. And they have to sometimes do things despite not wanting to do them. And we didn't enter into some sort of argument with them. We just said, okay, we disagree on this. We don't think they have the right to hockey masks, as an example. But we understood where they were coming from, and we decided to make the changes. And frankly, I think we have a stronger IP from it. We have a stronger sense of what the slasher is and where our game is, and it made us stronger, so we have no complaints. As for any sort of beef between us and Gun Media or Elphonic, we have nothing but well wishes for them. Those guys, Gun Media and Elphonic, are bigger companies. They got a lot more titles as companies behind their belt than us. We're a new company. This is our first title. So I think they can sympathize with how difficult it is to get your first title out the door as a team. We can completely sympathize with the fact that they're trying to get an asymmetrical game out the door. And although, yes, it probably does help for sure that you have an established IP, they have to deal day in, day out with people nitpicking them about, have you made it perfect? Is it the perfect Jason experience? I don't know. Are you going to please me? I was pretty upset with this game. There's always that kind of attitude. So really, at the end of the day, all you can do is make the best game possible, support your team, get it out there, cross your fingers, and then listen to your fans and filter out the shit. Make sure that you're not listening to people who are just trolling.
And I think that's it. I think people should understand that supporting all the horror games and supporting the industry makes the bigger companies and these movie studios take notice. I mean, you look at the superheroes, they got all games for them, for the sci-fi people. If the movie studios see money and the AAA companies see money and see good quality indie horror games coming out, they're going to make more of them.
Of course. But I think at the same time, I think thinking of things in terms of indie small, publisher big, money, like it really just comes down to support what you love and there'll be more of it, regardless of where the money's coming from or where it's going. Just support what you love and have fun with it. For me, traditionally, I love RPGs. Love them. Play lots and lots of RPGs. But my favorite game series, period, is Total War. Don't know why. It's a strategy game. I have some other strategy games, but Total War for me is like the pinnacle of all the games that I've ever owned. Total War game comes out, I get it. Even the worst one, even Empire Total War, which had a lot of bugs. They fixed it. They made it a great game, and there's some fantastic PC mods made by a guy named Darth Mod. Yes, that guy was fantastic, and he did some great stuff. And you just play what you love. I think it's always interesting that people get kind of worked up at, as gamers, we get kind of like, oh, EA, they're not great, and Activision, they got too much money, and man, I don't like that these guys aren't doing this with this IP. It's just like, no, just focus on what's good in front of you. And if you do that, and if developers do that and focus on good gameplay, we end up with great things like Batman Arkham City, Fallout New Vegas. We end up with fantastic things like the Total War series. We end up with like Stellaris, which I'm a huge fan of. I know there's problems with Stellaris, but I'm quite happy with the game. I love it. And then if we just kind of accept that sometimes the game is not for me, that you should move on, do it. But I'm always amazed at how creative our industry is. Like, Behavior and Starbreeze did really great work with Dead by Daylight. And I think Gun Media is going to have a blast with Friday 13th. Fingers crossed, knock on wood, cross your heart, hope to die. I hope they do great. But we're really looking forward to being part of that. And I think we got something really special to put out there, and I hope people like it and have a great time with it.
So, Kevin, having worked in the industry for a long time, do you have any tips for people who maybe they want to become a marketing director, or maybe they just want to get their indie game off the ground? I mean, do you have any tips for people to get into the gaming industry?
Persistence. Persistence is your number one thing. You set goals. I don't think you should let yourself, you can be focused. There's different ways. Know what you love, so to speak. But I fell into the movie, I actually worked in the movie industry as an armorer's assistant for a small period of time. That's like the guys on set who blow things up and bring fake weapons and stuff on set, like guns and swords and things like that. And although that was my dream job, that was a job that I wanted as a kid, I found out quickly that it was not the job that paid the bills, and it didn't give me the lifestyle that I wanted, and it wouldn't have allowed me to have a family, which I have now, and all that kind of stuff. So although I completely respect the people who choose that lifestyle and do that, and they're great guys, I couldn't do that. And I left and I started doing marketing. I was working with marketing agencies in different places, and then I had the opportunity to work in the game industry, and I took it, and I'd never looked back. And I think that persistence is really the key, and understanding skills are transferable. I've met so many people in our industry who they took that chance. They sent their resume in. They had no game experience, and they just said, I'll send it in for this one thing. And then the company called them back because they saw something that they liked. And there's so many different ways to get in. Building your own thing, going on Kickstarter, doing mods, meeting people, networking, doing it through game media. I know lots of guys who are Twitch, YouTuber, or from game journalism who transitioned into the industry, or transitioned out, people who were in marketing for years and then they moved out and are much happier in game media or doing streaming or doing passion projects. Things change. Be flexible. That's my advice. And persistence. Persistence is key. You gotta go after it, but also be aware of what you're doing. It's one thing to be the kid who falls off the bike and scrapes your knee, get the bike back up and keep pedaling. But if you keep putting too much weight on the left handlebar, it'll only do one thing, right? So you need to have the ability to self-analyze and understand when you're doing something wrong and correct. That's it. I don't, at the same time, I've been incredibly lucky. I've had some great mentors. I've met some great people. I live in Montreal, which is one of the gaming capitals industry-wise of the world. So I've been very fortunate with timing and all sorts of stuff like that. But I would say that if you're persistent and if you're looking at stuff, yeah, you can make it. As an off note, if you want to get into gaming, if you want to see how difficult it can be, whether it's design or programming or whatever, I highly recommend picking up either a free version of Unreal or Unity. Go online, there's lots of free tutorials, learn how to code, learn how to do whatever, and go from there. I myself, as an example, I have not official voice work experience, but I've done acting in high school. So one of the things is I understand how to do like voice recording and acting and all that kind of stuff, and that's been very helpful in my current job because being able to talk with a specific tone for long periods of time is helpful when you're doing PR stuff and marketing stuff. Knowing how to code, even if you don't end up coding, could be helpful for someone who becomes like a project manager because you'll understand timelines and how to scope things out properly and everything like that. And don't get worried about where you're at. Everyone starts somewhere. Everyone starts small. It's just about being persistent and pushing yourself forward. And be positive. Don't be negative. Doesn't help anyone.
Well, Kevin, you do have a booming voice. I feel like you should be doing commercials. We're going to have to do a whole separate podcast one day just about your time in the movie industry, I guess, because that sounds interesting.
I unfortunately can't get too much into it, but what I can say, because in that specific kind of role, you don't want to give out too much information. But what I can say is that it was an interesting time in my life. It was very short, and although I had a lot of fun, it was just, anyone who works in the film industry knows this. Unless you're very lucky and you have steady work, you're working in one of the film capitals. When a film production is going on, and you're unionized or you're making good union dues or whatever, you live like a king. You're making money hand over fist sometimes when it's a big production. And then the in-betweens, you're on craft dinner 6 days a week, And that was something where I just couldn't do that. Like video games for me is a much more stable industry. And more importantly, I get a much longer period of time to work with people. And getting that time of camaraderie long term, I find is much more fun. I never worked in television, though. Maybe television's a bit differently. Like when you're probably on like a good series that's doing a year run or whatever, depending on how they film, I guess that could be different. Anyways, there you go.
Well, Kevin, besides thank you, is there anything that you would like to say to your fans?
You guys are great. Keep contacting us. Keep sending out emails and all that jazz. We love responding. We love seeing stuff. Get on our Discord channel if you get a chance. We got an open Discord channel. I'll link it up for Derek to put up with us. And our last chance backing round is coming up in mid-August. For mid-August, which was our beta, and we're going to get our last chance backing round up as soon as possible. And once that's up and running, you'll be able to participate. And we're really, really humbled at how people have reacted to our game, and we're looking forward to getting it in people's hands and having a lot of fun.
Well, Kevin, yeah. I didn't have a chance to participate before, but I am going to participate in that last chance backing round. I'd love to have you on here again after the beta comes out.
That'd be that I can't talk suddenly. It's just stutter. I don't know where that came from. It's kind of funny. We can leave this in. Yeah, I absolutely would love to come back to the show, Derek, and it was a pleasure to be here.
Well, I'd like to thank you very much and thank the team at Last Year for their hard work and thank Elastic Games for allowing you to be on the show.
Yeah, well, sometimes they let me out of my cage in marketing, but it's been great, and I look forward to talking to you again, Derek.
All right, well, you have a good day, Kevin.
You too. Ciao.
Well, hey, guys, that wraps up the interview. Thanks to Kevin Scharf for being an excellent guest. Thank you to Elastic Games. Thank you to the awesome team at Last Year for putting all the hard work in for everybody. And don't forget to show your support to the game by going to Last Year's Facebook page, Twitter, YouTube, Discord, and any other social media platforms that they may have. Remember, guys, it's important to support the industry. This interview was recorded on April 26, 2017. It took a little while to get the video ready, but you guys deserve nothing less. And as always, thank you guys for listening to The Derek Ruby Show. You can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and Instagram. Have a good one, and I'll see you guys next time.
now that I've trapped him, I'm gonna go in for the kill.